Fridays. It's Who's Hot, Who's Not with Russ Moore. And we planned it out. I'm going to do a little jellyfish. No.
I wanted to point at the camera.
Oh,
That's right.
so who's hot, who's not this week?
A lot of different people. We've got a full list, and there's a lot going on, especially on the national level. There's stuff going on the local level as well. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to talk who's hot, who's not. It's hot outside, so that's always fun.
Well, it's not as hot as it was, this time last week. We got a little break here. It's doing A-OK here in the studio.
That's right.
Let's start going down the list and putting you through your paces.
All right.
Colonel Ada Sumpko with the state police. Why'd you put her on the hot list?
I put her on the hot list because she came out and she made a strong statement against the use of these ridiculous ATVs on our city streets here in Providence and elsewhere. She said that the state police are not going to tolerate it. They're dangerous. They're not insured. They're not appropriate for our roadways. They're intimidating. So she said that state police are going to take action against these vehicles whenever they see them being used incorrectly, which is on our streets.
Now, of course, the GoLocal had obtained video footage of ATVs both on city streets and state roads on 95, basically right in front of the mall, kind of popping a wheelie. So we heard from the Colonel. Now, again, we heard from sources here about the city's policy, and the city says that they will not chase. Now, we did hear from a mother of 2 young children who was confronted by several bikers as part of one of these kind of roving gangs who, I guess, felt very threatened. So it's an issue. A lot of ATVs around the city, and they're not supposed to be in city streets.
We don't have enough problems here in Providence with our financial issues and the fact that our infrastructure is crumbling. Now we have to deal with roving ATV gangs. That's not a good look. That's not going to help us increase our tourism here in Providence. So kudos to the Colonel for saying that at least she will stand up and right this wrong. So kudos to her.
Okay, Colonel Sempigo on the hot list.
Yes.
Downtown, as we are here, Michael de Grand Prix with the Downtown Neighborhood Association.
Sure. He, as well as over 150 other volunteers, are out cleaning up the Riverwalk and showing some good citizenship, selfless action to clean up our city and make it safe and attractive. It makes you make it beautiful and attractive. So I wanted to give him a shout out. I thought he did well in his interview here on Go Local Live. So I wanted to give a shout out to people like him and people like him who do the right thing for no other reason other than it's just the right thing to do.
We've had the Downtown Neighborhood Association on several times here.
We have.
Again, a growing group of residents downtown, and as you pointed it out, taking it into their own hands to say, hey, this is where we live. A lot of folks work here, a lot of folks come into town, but we live here, so we're going to take ownership, put the stake in the ground. The group is growing, so Michael de Grand Prix on the hot list.
We like it.
Okay, who else? Sean Spicer.
Sure, it must be a relief to Rhode Island's own Sean Spicer to be out of a position where it's probably the hardest government job in the world, really, to be the press secretary to any president, but especially to President Trump. I can't think of a more difficult job. The press has gotten very rabid and very aggressive in their reporting, which they should always be. So that's not a bad thing, but they were very tough on Mr. Spicer, and I think he's headed for greener pastures, and I feel like he's going to make a lot of money in the private sector given his years of experience in communications and government. So I give him a nod, and I wish him well in the future.
Well, we'll see where he lands. I'm sure he's probably taking a little time to recoup, kind of think about his next steps. And of course, on the hot list, interesting. Now, this is before kind of everything happens.
Right.
You submitted your hot or not list. Another press communications director. You had the mooch on there. It's Scaramouche is hot, but there's a little bit that's happened since then.
I put Anthony Scaramouche on the hot list. Interesting story. I actually got to meet Mr. Scaramouche back in 2013 in Las Vegas at the SALT conference, which stands for Skybridge Alternative Investments, which, by the way, is the company that he's attempting to sell to a Chinese firm. And every year they put on a big conference in Las Vegas, and I went in 2013 and I got to meet Mr. Scaramucci for about 5 minutes. And listen, how much can you really discern in meeting someone over 5 minutes and exchanging basically pleasantries? But he sounded like a really nice guy, really polite, very genial, very affable, very friendly. And I saw him speak publicly, and I thought he did a tremendous job at the conference. So I thought this was a tremendous choice by Donald Trump to lead his communications team, which is a very tough job, because I thought Mr. Scaramucci is smooth as silk, so to speak, and I think he's very personable, and I thought he'd be a great guy to lead the communications office.
Now, he is smooth as silk, but he kind of hit some roadblocks this week. What do you think of the comments, the very controversial, contentious comments?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't come off as the most professional comments, so to speak. I mean, I have to say, they were very opposite of how I view Mr. Scaramucci. I think we've all said things we'd like to take back at certain times. There is some question as to whether the reporter took more liberty than he should have, and whether the comments, the vulgar comments, were kind of made off the record or in jest. I'm sure we've all said things that we wouldn't like to see on the front page of every major publication in the country. So, but when you're the White House communications director, you have to be careful. I'm sure he'd like to take those comments back, but I still think he's a good man for the job. I think he's going to do well in the position, and it's a really tough job. So I feel like we've got to give him some leeway and let him get his buttons straight. Let him get all his people in the right places.
All his ducks in order.
All his ducks in a row. Yeah, let him get all his ducks in order. Thank you.
Well, do you think he's sort of Trump-esque in that respect, of sort of getting caught making comments, sort of blowing past them, sort of moving on? He seems quite Trump-esque, and he's a little different delivery, a little smoother, but kind of Trumpian.
I can see how you would say that after those comments that were reported, that he's kind of Trump-esque. But that's not the guy that I've seen speak in public, and that's not the guy that I met. I wouldn't think he was very Trump-esque in my own experience. So I can see why you would think that. It looks that way, but I'm saying let's give a little more time.
Okay, giving the mooch some more time.
Absolutely,
keep going
good guy.
down the list here. Senator John McCain on the hot list.
Sure, and again, as you've said before, this list was submitted before, John McCain made his vote at 1:40 a.m. last night to torpedo the Republican health care plan that would have would have created a conference between the House and the Senate to reform health care. He torpedoed that with his vote last night. I'm not really taking a position on that, but what I am saying is I put him on the hot list because he's always been a stand-up guy. He's always done what he believes is right in his heart, and I think he did that again last night. And I'm really pulling for the senator. He's a great American. He's a man of honor. He's a man of integrity. He served our country so honorably, and he's been diagnosed with brain cancer. So I'm wishing him the best. I think if there's anyone who can beat that devastating illness, it would be him. So all the best to Senator McCain now and as we move forward.
Senator McCain on the hot list. A little closer to home, United Way making a big donation here to Hasbro.
Sure, to help reading. It's all about literacy. Summer reading. I feel like kids are often glued to their cell phones or their tablets, but they're not really reading. They're playing games or they're reading short text messages. So to make this donation to help get kids reading this summer, I think is a great thing. It can only do good things for our youth and their education, and therefore our economy.
Again, I believe it was this Women's Council for the United Way
that had
raised over $100,000 to make this donation again to the Hasbro Summer Learning Initiative. Put them on the hot list as we got a little closer to home as we finish up the hot list.
All right.
Let's go a little home and national again as we go back to the not list. Well, to the not list. Jack Reed, you have on the not list.
Sure, Jack Reed. Anthony Scaramucci is not the only one who made comments maybe he'd like to take back, but Jack Reed was caught on the hot mic, so to speak. Senator Collins from Maine forgot to turn her microphone off, and it was a bipartisan back and forth over their mutual distaste for President Trump, and Senator Reed called the president crazy, and I'm not sure that Senator Reed is in a position to make that statement because I don't think he's a trained psychiatrist or psychologist, so I think it was a bit disrespectful, and I think, look, he could have made an apology. He could have said, look, I was speaking without thinking, and I regret the comment, let's move forward. But he didn't. He kind of doubled down on his comments, so it kind of turned me off, and I decided to put him on the not hot list.
Well, of course, GoLocal had written that editorial to that effect. Again,
sure.
Both the comments of crazy, how it's used by mental health professionals. It's basically kind of the third rail of usage of words. And then if you really think the president does have some psychological impairment, that you need to start the proceedings to move forward with impeachment. Otherwise, apologize.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's keep going down the not list. You have the governor with the National Governors Association.
Sure. GoLocal reported this week that the governor sought donations from major corporate executives to fund the National Governors Association. And in exchange for those donations, she promised access to major CEOs from different businesses. She promised the major CEOs from businesses access to major government officials like governors and major federal government officials, heads of different administrations and departments. So I think that kind of reeks of pay to play, and I think it's not a good look. And I feel as if the National Government Association meeting should stand on its own, and we shouldn't have to sell access to fund it.
Well, of course, it was kind of, under scrutiny being here in Rhode Island. Of course, GoLocal had first written about who the donors were, what the donor levels were. And I think, folks, these emails just showed this sort of back and forth. And as you mentioned, who knows moving forward how the National Governors Association will handle it. But GoLocal had FOIA'd, again, these emails to see about the communications and just the language used. And just put it out there. These are the easiest, best stories when you have this type of communication. We're not writing it. They said it. Right. That's right there. You talk amongst yourselves.
And they were very open about it. If you pay us, you'll get to talk to some big decision makers. And it seemed like, this will help your business or this will help you. And I think that was a turn off to me. I don't think that's good government.
Chris Bellagio, the acting police chief in North Providence, suspended.
Sure. Acting Chief Bellagio has been suspended because he's had some high-profile incidents here that have shined poorly on him and therefore shined poorly on the North Providence Police Department. He got into an altercation with a Cranston officer back in May. And Reportedly. And that's been reported by a few different outlets. The altercation happened, and it wasn't a good thing for him. And also, he's been the subject of a sexual harassment complaint from 2014. He has trouble getting along with the police officers union, so it's not a good look for him. He's been suspended, so it doesn't look like his future is too bright as far as being a chief is concerned. A
lot going on in North Providence. This has been going on for a while. You put him on the not hot list.
Sure.
Kind of stemming off that story, you put the Providence Journal on not hot list.
Sure, the Providence Journal, not hot. They had their own little version of what President Trump would call fake news. They ran a story about the Bellagio incident where they quoted an anonymous source, and the anonymous source gave information that proved to be blatantly false about that altercation in May at Cranston Memorial event. And they didn't corroborate their sources. They only had one anonymous source, and they ran with it. So it wasn't a good look for them. They had to retract a front-page story, and online they had to say that they no longer stood by their story. So it doesn't help when you have to retract stories and you have to step back from what you reported because you didn't do enough legwork or you went with a shoddy source, especially when the press is under assault from people like President Donald Trump who say that the press is partaking in a lot of fake news.
I have to say something about that retraction that was posted by the Journal.
Sure.
They made a point of saying they had been contacted under the auspices of anonymity, and they made a point of printing the person's name. It was almost like, you gave us the wrong story, we're going to out you.
That's a great point. I noticed that too, and that also rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it's a good idea. Maybe if an anonymous source gives you the wrong information, boom, we're going to throw you out there. Maybe it'll make anonymous sources a little bit more careful in their coming forward with information.
Well, it seemed
Make
like
sure it's true.
We got the false story, we're going to out you as well. If we're going down, you're coming down with us.
What do you think of that?
As a reporter,
if an anonymous source gave you the wrong information, do you think that would be a good thing to do to try to make an example out of them?
That's a good question, and I'm hoping it's a bridge I do not have to cross.
Yes, that's a good point. Let's never get there. Let's never get to that point.
Let's not go down that road. So let's keep going.
You know what? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's the good point, Kate.
Oh, Russ. I always have something to say about everything.
Yes.
Let's finish up the not hot list here as I'm looking down at here. 2 more items on the not hot list. Again, locally, road rage. 146. How scary was that this week?
Sure, you got people shooting bullets at other people on Route 146 over near 295. I mean, I know I don't like being cut off. A lot of times I'll be driving, someone will beat that horn, or I'll get upset, and I'm going to think twice about it now as we move forward. If someone cuts me off, I'm just going to let it go, and you must be in a hurry, because I do not want someone shooting bullets at me on the highway. That was frightening and scary, and I hope the state police or the authorities can get to the bottom of this and arrest this person.
Well, they've been looking. They posted that picture. There was a still. You could kind of make out the car a little bit. Obviously, an appeal to the public to say, help us find these people. But you made a good point. Road rage is road rage. Makes you think twice before sort of taking it up a notch. You never know who's packing heat.
Yeah.
Last on the not hot list, I mean, the president?
Sure, the president of the United States is not hot. I mean, he's going to Twitter and he's criticizing one of his top employees, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, saying that he's beleaguered, saying that he's weak. I mean, that's not a good way to build employee morale. Now, this is a president who prides himself on being this great businessman. That's not a good way to run a business, to humiliate your employees in front of the rest of the world.
Apprentice.
Unfortunately, a few times. I wasn't a regular viewer. But, You know, here's the thing.
Not on par for the course for his previous behavior, though.
I guess not, but here's the thing with this president that gets on my nerves. He's one of these people that demands loyalty. Everything's about loyalty. This guy's not loyal to me. Who is he ever loyal to? I haven't seen him show a lot of loyalty to really anybody. So, I mean, I think the president should understand that loyalty is a two-way street. That if you want people to respect you and show you loyalty, you need to kind of be loyal to them. And I haven't seen a lot out of this president. So it's kind of rubbing me the wrong way. And I think it rubs a lot of people the wrong way if you look at his approval numbers.
What did you think of
Hopefully Mr. Scaramouche can help boost some of those approval numbers because he needs all the help he can get.
While I have you in here, what do you think of the president's tweets about reversing the Obama policy to allow transgender individuals to serve in the military?
I thought it was completely unprofessional in light of the fact that the Joint Chiefs of Staff sent out a memo or sent out a statement saying they don't know what he's talking about, they don't understand it, and they're not going to do anything unless they get more guidance or more clarification. I don't know how you take such a major policy proposal and announce it on Twitter. And I love Twitter, and I love social media. I think social media is great. But I think that before you just announce something on social media, you should have everyone on the same page. But that's not important to this president because he's got his staff fighting with each other. He's fighting with his staff. So cohesion and cohesiveness are clearly not his strong suits.
Well, I think we'll see if it actually was a policy position of his, has not instructed the armed services to take up this order, if you will. Maybe just more distraction politics.
Okay, he seems to be a master at that. So I'm sure we'll be talking about the president in
Next
weeks to come.
Next week, we'll have you back in for Hot or Not. A little fist bump. Look for Russ Moore's column on
Take
Monday,
care.
and of course, look for him next Friday. And he comes into the studio to explain his decision.